Record. There we go, recording. Right, so greetings and citations, people. Welcome back to Stoffel Presents. Continuing my latest series of interviewing amazing indie devs. We are here with the wonderful Mr. Ben Pritchard.
Hello.
Do you want to just introduce yourself? Tell people who you are, what you do, Ben.
Okay, well, as has been said, my name is Ben. I'm what I'd like to refer to as a grassroots indie developer, because indie is basically everybody from who's written their first game out of Stack Overflow copy paste all the way up to the ex-AAA guys. So it's such a wide range these days, and there's talk of sort of like AAA and the indie apocalypse and that sort of thing. And indie has become very much money driven over the because I've been doing this since. The first game I released was back in 1994, so it's been a while. But yeah, the indie scene has become, as there's so much money and stuff in there, and you hear so much about sort of like monetization and marketing and in-app purchases. And I thought, well, that's not what I signed on for. I just want to make games and have fun and watch other people having fun with my games, So grassroots indie, I'd
Classic
say.
indie dev.
Yeah. The kind of guys who who have been making stuff for the public domain libraries back in the pre-PC days.
Oh, this is where my love of indie games came from. I grew up with the Spectrum 48K, but it mainly was the Amiga 500. And I used to love going to the local market, and you pay like £3 for 20 floppy disks.
Mm-hmm.
And there'd just be games that people have made in the bedroom and stuff, and shareware and stuff like that. It was some of the best games were in there.
In which case, do you agree with the statement? Jeff Minter is God.
Oh, Jeff Minter, that's the name I recognise.
Lamatron, Revenge of the Mutant Camels.
Yes, he is a god.
Yes.
Yes, he is.
Well, at some point, let me show you. I'll have to see if I can share a screen at some point, if I can dig it out. I'll show you a photo of him. Play Expo 2017, the second alpha build of Bullion after we'd worked out all the kinks from our first show. Jeff Minter playing versus me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you win?
On the surface, I'm all calm, professional, collected. Inside, my inner 10-year-old is going, yeah!
I was the same at one of my first res. I was interviewing Rob Howson of Hyper Sentinel, and he just tried after he went, "Oh, can you hang for a bit? Because my dad's just got to get a coffee."
Oh, Andy Houston, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, yes, this guy made Iridium and Pinball Dreams. Like, yes, I can hang around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we know Rob. He did one of a couple of shows that we've been at. We've had a couple of shows with Jim Bagley. There's a few big names that are sort of like creeping back in the door, because at the moment they're now at the age where the nostalgia kick is really happening and really hitting hard. So, Houston has kind of almost been reinvented as Huey Games now under Rob. Yeah. So, it's exciting times on that.
But you were saying that you made your first game in '94. So how did you become a games developer? What inspired you to make games?
Oh God, now we set the Wayback Machine. So, I guess the real inspiration came around. Believe it or not, I'm a few years older than you. I'm actually 45, and
look, a day over 35, mate.
I don't act a day over 10. But so that's sort of like golden age of video games territory when I was in my my pre-teen years, going down to holidays, the slot machine arcades, and playing things like Robotron and Defender and all the classics and things like that, and then watching these things evolve. I still have a big love for the Space Harrier sit-in. That was sort of like the speed that thing went at the time, so that kind of like switched something on in my brain. And then my primary school actually was very forward thinking. So this is again when I'm about 9. They had a BBC, as most schools did at that point in time, in which you did your maths and your spelling games on. But they also taught programming.
Wow.
They actually had sort of like, for a select few people who showed an interest, they basically rotated everybody in the top 2 years through sort of like a taster session of programming. And because there weren't enough teachers, I actually the year that I should have been in the third year from the top, I was actually bumped up to the second year and did 2 years in that year because of this lack of teachers. So I had 3 years exposure to this thing where I was learning how to program. And so, you know, that just lit things on fire. And so my mum got me a couple of those Osborne books, you know, teach us, you know, how to do BASIC and that sort of thing. And I wrote, it was almost like a little text game, you know, fill in the missing words, and that was the seed, so to speak. You know, I had to, you know, wrote it all out on paper, gave it to the programming teacher. He debugged it and put it all in. Had to demonstrate it in front of the school, and I was king of the hill for 2 weeks. And then somebody realised that computer programmers were actually supposed to be massive geeks, and that was the end of that little ride. So
that was your first taste of fame.
Yes, so then, you know, then I met Paul, my programming partner in the other half of Leda Entertainment at a youth club, and we discovered we had sort of like a mutual interest in game development. At that point, we were both working on text adventures, you know, sort of like some of the, so you know, sort of like Go North, Get Lamp, all that kind of stuff. Still great stuff. Pity we don't see those around so much these days.
Yeah, I do miss the old text adventure.
Well, I mean, you look at the way the internet's built and web pages. It is crying out for that sort of thing, that sort of nostalgia trip. All you need is the right font and a bit of suitable aging, and you could, you know, it's just a series of web pages. Then just keep on reacting.
My first ever computer game was a text adventure, because my dad used to have my uncles round and they play Lord of the Rings text adventure on the Spectrum.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
And it came in like the big case and had like 6 tapes and a copy of the book. And I wanted to play with them every week, and they wouldn't let me because it's like, you know, a couple of adults having a beer and play this game. Like, why would I have an 8-year-old with us? So my dad went, "Hey, go read that and come back." And I went and read Lord of the Rings for 2 weeks. Came back and solved the puzzle that they were on, and that was it. My love of computer games were born.
Yeah.
But it was just the idea for me, with the idea of reading this book, which I'd never read Lord of the Rings before either. Yeah. So I was a big reader anyway, but found this amazing story, and then not as on my screen, but I get to interact with it.
Yeah,
that blew my mind as an 8-year-old.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much the same story here. You know, as I started out on the Amstrad Cpc, which is very much an underdog machine, but a brilliant machine for what it was. It's, you know, had it been a couple of years earlier to market, it would have probably blown both the Spectrum and the Commodore 64 out of the water. In that, it had, you know, the color palette was bright and beautiful. It had a bit more memory available for programmers to use out of the 64K than its counterparts. So I probably just you know, kicked over a couple of anthills there of the regular watchers, but it was a great machine, you know. And there was some great games that it came with, sort of like a pack of 20-odd games that you could play, and some were really good and others were complete dross. But because, you know, at that time you just switched it on and started typing away in BASIC, off you went. And so, yeah, made a couple of little text adventures on that. Paul had an Atari ST by that point, so, you know, I see the twitch. I see the Amiga owner twitch. You know, just as I had the wince when you know, for the Atari owner wince when you said about it. Yeah. We started off on, well, he bought this thing called the Shoot 'em Up construction kit that you might well have heard of, which it was, you know, basically a very early proto game engine that you could just make vertical scrolling shoot 'em ups with. And so I thought, you know, he's doing arcade games, whereas I can only do text adventures. I want in on this action. So I bought this this pack for the Atari, and this is sort of like fate in the making. The pack that I got was called the Discovery Pack, and in it, as well as sort of like the 3-4 games you get in Atari Basic, came this thing called Stoss, which was basically it was a version of Basic, but it was geared for making games. So you could load it. You could take the screens that you'd drawn in an art package and load them in. You could draw. You had a sprite editor, you had a music editor, you had a sort of like a very rough sound editor. You had various extensions that you could get, and you get them off of cover discs and things that could do sort of like maps and scrolling and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, you know, gradually over time, it was kind of like Paul and me were kind of for those first few years. It was kind of like two guys working out in a gym and having a bit of a pissing contest, because one of us would come up with a new way of doing something or make some new flashy effect, and immediately sort of like, check this out, And we figured out that it made sense to combine forces after a while, and so 1994, almost the very end of the Atari's life. PCs were beginning to come in by then, and I've been working on this game called Kev's World, which was a flip screen puzzle game, and it got finished. And I was thinking, well, how on earth do I release this? And then the next thing came along, which is for me to play with, which I then took the character Kev and made a sequel game, Curse of Boulder. And I happened to get in touch with a public domain library that was offering up a new scheme, a licenseware scheme, because I tried releasing a couple of things on shareware, didn't work so well, didn't make any money, didn't really get anywhere. So these things I went with licenseware. So, for a 2-disc game, which is what Curse of Boulder was, it was £6 a copy through this public domain library, and of that the developer got £2. Now that's a 33% cut. Where do you get that these days?
Yeah.
With and if you're in sort of like the industry, the only people who are doing anything like that, is where you've got two guys working on, or a few are working on one game and putting it out on a store that takes 30%.
Yeah.
So yeah, got a few £100 from that. Helped me through university, which was good. And then the ST kind of like fell by the wayside to the PC. Windows 95 had just come in, which completely changed the memory map of PC. So all the books on how to write games for the PC were useless. And the other thing which was a problem was that everything was just beginning to kick off with 3D. So the big difference is you want to make a 2D game, you just need to know how to play battleships. It's just a grid, and you're just putting things on it. As soon as you're in 3D territory, especially when you're talking 3D modeling, and it's very much in its infancy. Then there's no Unity, no Unreal, no game engines, nothing. You're having to write everything from scratch, and I just couldn't wrap my head around it. The maths was just too much. So I kind of fell out of game writing for probably the best part of. It was well over a decade that I wasn't doing anything. Just sitting around for there was a few sporadic attempts in the late 90s, and then it just kind of fizzled out. And then so fast forward those 10 years, because also the games at that point in time, really a lot of them weren't impressing me. You had things like Manhunt, for example, and that's not a game, that's a murder simulator.
Yeah.
Where's the fun in that? Where's the fun?
When you're just talking there about the early stuff, the Atari one, it's like I've never really been a big code. I've tried learning about 4 or 5 times. It just doesn't stay in my head. It just goes.
That's what Stack Overflow's for.
When you were talking, then it just made me feel really nostalgic suddenly. I remember buying some of my great memories when my dad would buy the Spectrum magazine, and he used to get entire games in there. You just copy them out.
I still have in my roof, hopefully a still functional 1040 Atari STE, every cover disc from ST Action, from edition 9 up to the point they closed, and 2 disc boxes full of my own work, including those 2 games that I released.
Nice.
So yeah, it's all still there. One of these days I'll get around to archiving it and putting it all together, but. So there is actually, I'll have to dig out the links and send them over to you. But what really, there's 2 key incidents that really kind of like stick out with my game writing in those early years. Because I released Curse of Boulder first. The sequel went first, actually, ironically enough. So Curse of Boulder, then Kev's World, and so the 2 things that stick out for me. One, at that point in time, you had 2 major Atari magazines, and ST Action had folded by that point or was doing other things. So you had ST Format and Atari ST User, and both games got reviewed in both of those magazines in the PD section. So I actually had magazines with reviews of my games. It's like so that was one of them. But the other one that really sticks out in my head, and you've got to remember, this is 1994, pre sort of like internet boom. very few people outside universities have email and that sort of thing. And as was tradition, on the disk there's a README file for the game saying, you know, how to play it and this sort of thing, and where to contact me if you've got any thoughts or anything. You know, you don't expect anyone. I got this letter in my pigeonhole at the university one day. This chap up in Scotland, he'd written to me, and he was basically saying, yeah, it's a really cool game. Kev's one. He's saying, really cool, I'm really enjoying it. I'm a bit stuck with this boss. Have you got any tips? And that really struck a chord with me. The fact that this chap had been so into what I'd built, you know, we'd never met. I don't even know if he'd read the magazine review. He was just, you know, he could have been anybody. And he was, he'd actually taken the time to sit down, write a letter, you know, find out where I was, write a letter to me, and say how much he appreciated it. And, you know, that's somebody's life I've put a little zing into. And, you know, forget earning lots of money. I think that's where the grassroots idea kind of settled. It wasn't about making lots of money then. And I did have aspirations earlier on to make it into a business, and I did sort of look into it when I was a kid, and then I saw, you know, when I was in my late teens, and then I saw how much work it was to run a business, because my old man used to run his own carpet business, and the amount of time he spent doing the books, it's like, that's not fun. And then shortly after that, you got a few years after that, you started hearing the first accounts of crunch time. You might have heard of EA Spouse. It's the wife of a guy who worked for EA Sports.
Right.
So it's kind of like where the first industry recordings of crunch time came from. And I just thought, no, I don't want none of that. And that kind of like made me think, right, game development is not going to be my career. I'll keep that on the side so I can keep enjoying it and do a day job that's going to make me some cash.
It's that kind of thing that it's I hate when people go, oh, if you've got a hobby, make it into your career. And it's like, no, because I enjoy my hobby.
Yeah.
The moment my hobby becomes my career, I start hating it.
Exactly. So, so yeah, there was this 10-year period. Getting back to the point, I was just talking that pretty horribly. So there was this 10-year period, and then you know, I spent a lot of time drowning in World of Warcraft. You know, as is so ex WoW addict. I'll be the first to admit it.
Well, I'm going to jump in again. My shiny new PC arrives in a month, and I'm thinking I might step back into Azeroth.
No, my missus would murder me if that was going to happen. So she's she wants me to do something constructive with my time. So, but it was actually her sort of like inspiration. So, you know, why don't you get back into this? You used to do this all the time. At that point in time, I discovered XNA, which was the framework, not an engine, but a framework, a language, sort of like a language extension on C# that Microsoft used for the Xbox 360 and the PC. And so I started tinkering around with that. And ironically enough, so I know we've talked before about Bopscotch, which is the game that we released prior to Bullion, and that was released for the Xbox 360. Back in sort of like 2010, I was actually working on a first version of that, which was going to be it was a little test run of sort of like some 3D work, because, you know, XNA made that a bit easier. And I was thinking, yeah, you know, the reason why I was working on XNA was because I was thinking, okay, cool, I can make something for the Xbox. I can actually finally get on a console. And then Microsoft said, oh, we're making this phone. We're making Windows Phone. And I thought to myself, well, if they do the same thing as they did with the Xbox, i.e. a decent marketing campaign and throw money at it until it sticks, then rather than trying to get onto iPhone or anything like that, it's a little pull. Anyway, as part of this user group, and the biggest incentive for me was they basically said, right, Microsoft have approached us for this competition, which we've got 3 Xbox 360s, and whoever comes up with the best Windows Phone game, it doesn't even have to work on the device fully. It just has to work in the emulator, and whoever can come up with the best game will win an Xbox 360. So there's me thinking, well, I'm broke and I want an Xbox 360 for testing the first version of Bopscotch. So I stopped working on Bopscotch and literally threw together in 2 weeks this little sort of like space salvage game called Astro Swag, where you had to gather bits of sort of like floating space valuable stuff, and then fire them into these collector pods. but there was sort of like space cops flying around, and if you wanted, and you didn't have any weapons, the only thing you could do was throw this stuff back at them. So you either had to choose about collecting it or keeping the fuzz off your back. You know, it's sort of like that idea of balanced mechanics was coming in even then. So I thought, yeah, cool, I'll win this Xbox 360 for the box scotch, and then and so with this thing, I won.
Congrats.
The Xbox 360 then spent the next 4 years in its brown paper when it arrived, up in the roof, because I'd just gotten so bitten by the bug of doing mobile stuff that I didn't actually touch anything else for 4 years. So so Astro Swag got released. It got released about 6 months after Windows Phone first launched, and that was kind of fun. And
just exclusive on Windows Phone then.
Yes, at that point, because XNA didn't support iOS or Android, and at that point I figured, well, if, like I said, if Microsoft do throw money at it and it sticks and it grows, then I will be one of the first people in. There'll be nobody in the marketplace apart from me and a few others.
Yeah, good place to get it.
Whereas, I mean, Google Play, for example, you pay $25, I think it is, and you can throw whatever you want up there. You know, that's why the mobile market is drowning in My First Games and asset flips and all the horribleness that it is now.
And all these ad bloated games and stuff. And
yeah, I mean, there's again, I could go on a divergence here, but basically, yeah, the whole thing is based around the psychology of making people spend money on in-app purchases now.
I think I've got like 3 or 4 articles up on StoffelPresents.com just having a go at the predatory practices of mobile gaming.
Yeah, I mean, it's either a funny one. Here's a funny one, right? After Astro Swag and Paul released this game called Interceptor that he'd been working on in various incarnations for about 20 years. You know, this was his baby, and eventually he got a version released on the Windows Phone. He then did another puzzle game called Rummy Cove, and then we embarked on sort of like this great project we called the Leda Arcade Collection, which was basically a series of very simple games, retro styles, to pay tribute to our childhood. So we had Galaxy Raiders, that was kind of like a Gallagher clone with a couple of other bits, a couple of twists in it. We had Incoming, which was what's it called? The missile attack or something like that.
Oh, Defender or something, yeah.
No, not Defender. It's the one where you have to zap the missiles coming down the city. I've lost track of my brain's just gone blank for that one.
Oh, I think I can see
I think it's
one
missile
where like when you shoot and they blow up into big white circles.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had Blade Force Rescue, which was kind of like a choplifter type, a choplifter Defender kind of mashup. But to simulate the arcade experience. And you've got to remember, this is sort of like 2012 that we were doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Pay to win and free to play and that kind of model really hadn't kicked up yet, especially on the Windows Phone, because Windows Phone in its first incarnation didn't have an in-app purchase mechanism.
Right.
So I rolled my own. What I did was I set this thing up so that when you wanted to purchase something, it opened a web browser, which opened a page on the Leda website, and which hooked into PayPal. When the transaction had completed, it would send the message back to the Leda website that would write stuff into the database, and the game would make a web call and update accordingly.
Nice.
But like I said, this predates all the concept. You know, a lot of this pay to play, free to play, pay to continue sort of mechanic. So the marketplaces didn't advertise that things had in-app purchases and that sort of thing. So what we'd done with the Leda Arcade Collection, which looking back was utterly stupid.
Sorry.
Leeds winning?
Yeah, Leeds just got. Sorry, if we're watching, I got my dates mixed up and Leeds are playing while we're recording this interview. I apologise, but Stuart Dallas scored. Sorry,
continue. His football match. So in our rush to make this thing work like the old arcade machines and to try and get some player engagement, you basically had
3-0.
You basically had these credits that you had to play, just like you insert a coin.
Like another 20p, another 20p.
Yeah. So whenever you downloaded one of the games for the first time, you got another so many credits, and every month your credit counter would get topped up a certain amount. And so unless you were playing sort of like about 6 or 7 times a day on one game, you'd probably have enough credits to keep you going for a while, so it'd keep you going pretty continuously. We weren't trying to be greedy or anything. But if you wanted to go above and beyond that, you either had to download another game from the series, which would top up the credit bank, because they were transferable. So if you had all 5 and just wanted to play one, you'd actually have a load of credits.
A load of credits for that one game. Yeah.
But if you wanted more than that, you had to buy them through this thing. And but because the game didn't have a price tag attached to it, it was floating in this free section. And so people actually accused us of being con artists and frauds because of this. They didn't. Obviously this is sort of like very early mobile game naivety.
It's not going to say free contains in-app purchases, because
no, it doesn't.
There wasn't any on the Windows Phone.
Yeah. So what's happening is people also, it predates the legislation to have to specify this. Mm-hmm. So people burning through all these credits really quickly, not realizing that you got top-ups for downloading the other games, or if you waited. And or they just saw this insert credit thing. They didn't even notice that they had credits already, and immediately slammed back with these 1-star reviews and that sort of thing. On the flip side, though, we got a whole bunch of 5-star reviews saying, "Oh my god, this game is like my childhood in a phone," So that was kind of like our Marmite moment.
Yeah, so is this? So this is working under Leda. You got the Leda, sorry.
Leda, yeah.
Okay, connection. So when did you and Paul decide we're creating Leda? Because you mentioned earlier you looked at businesses and went, that's a lot of work doing the books.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Leda as a name has been around for a long time, because and also it's one thing that we are investigating. There's not to be confused. There is actually a Greek company called Leda Games, which we're looking into what's going on with that, because every now and then we get sort of like an email about one of their couple of games that they've got out. We actually predate them, so if it causes us problems, I think we're in good shape. But we are a different entity to them. If anyone finds them, I just want to put that out there.
You came first, yeah.
Well, I mean, Leda Soft Developments, as it was initially, the old Leda. That comes back from the Atari days, and it was basically I can't remember what I was working under at some point, but it was something sort of like it involved the word lead or something like that as part of the studio name. Paul was working under his own studio name, Callisto Computing. And so when we actually decided to stop sort of like trying to tread on each other's toes and rub each other's noses in how cool what we were coding up was, and join up, we kind of sort of like said, well, okay, well, Callisto's a moon of Jupiter, so's Leda. So if I just swap these letters around, we've got the spirit of your studio name and the styling of my studio name all in the one, and that's where it was born.
And then moons of Jupiter, essentially.
Yeah, and that's so when you've got the logo, I don't know how well you can see that. So you've got
if you come up a bit higher.
So you've got the logo as it's been for a while. You've got Jupiter with a spot, and there's Leda sort of like so. I mean, the real Leda actually looks like a potato, but the actual movie, it's sort of like this potato shape. But so we've kind of romanticized it a bit, but and then we reinvented it as Leda Entertainment, very grandiose sounding for the mobile days, and we've just kept it.
So, what made you move away from mobile games to console games? Because we're going to get to, there's a couple of visual clues on screen right now with your T-shirt and your hat.
Okay. So the breakthrough actually came. We started doing some shows. We stumbled onto game expos, none of the big ones. There was this little show called Geek, which was down in Margate. It was largely powered by gear from the Replay Events team at that point in time. And we went there for a day just to demonstrate the arcade collection. And we were on this little table, which was sort of like next to the toilet, which isn't too bad actually, because as long as you don't mind the smell, everyone's got to go past it.
Yeah. You got a lot of footfall in that place.
So there's us with sort of like this, with very little promo material, and this rolling video of the arcade collection, and us sort of like trying to get people to, hey, come have a look at this little tiny screen. Of course, we knew nothing about it. Meantime, on the other side of the aisle, you've got Utopian World of Sandwiches running Chompy Chomp Chomp on this huge screen with their pop-up banners and looking really slick, and we're just looking at them going, okay, we've got to learn from this.
We need to up our game here, yes.
Yeah. And so That was just before we kicked off this this game called Bopscotch, which I've talked about. I talked about previously for the Xbox 360. We reinvented Bopscotch as a mobile game. So instead of being a 3D thing, it was actually sort of like we made it into a 2D. It wasn't exactly an endless runner. It was sort of like you had to each level you had to solve it, had to make it all the way through the trail, solving the puzzles of jump timing and that sort of thing. But what kind of made it unique was that again, this is 2014. It predates Photon and all that kind of easy networking stuff. I'd figured a way of making two phones talk to each other in real time over Wi-Fi. So and that was cross-device. So you could go Windows Phone to Android or Android to iOS. And also by this time we'd moved away from just PC because Microsoft had deprecated XNA with sort of like the coming of the Xbox One. And there was this language called there was this thing called Monogame, which is kind of like an open source implementation of XNA. It sits on top of what was Xamarin, which Microsoft have since bought out. But what Xamarin does is it allows C# to run on all mobile devices. So, iPhones, Androids, Windows Phone as it was back then. I mean, obviously that's gone now. But the point is that we could do one code base across all the mobile devices. And the only thing we'd have to worry about was, say, different screen sizes, which made life a lot easier. So we built Bopscotch. We've got this sort of like we built in this race mode where we wanted to get the the phone-to-phone racing. So you had one guy racing your mate on a phone, and because thanks to tip of the hat to Utopian World of Sandwiches with what they taught, what we learned from them, we decided we were going to do a PC version and put the race on a split screen and get everybody. Get everybody so they could see this thing, have big pop-up banners and everything like that. And once we got them on the PC version, we could say, oh, it's actually for mobile, blah, 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 blah. So we did the show with that in 2014. It was, again, it was another one of the geek shows.
You were one of the first people to launch a game on Windows Phone. One of the first people to have in-app purchases on a mobile game.
I wouldn't go to that far, but it's certainly one of the first ones on Windows Phone, I'd say.
One of the first people to have mobiles talk to each other in real time while playing a game. And one of the first cross-play games.
When you put it that way, yeah, it's
a pretty impressive there, good sir.
Yeah, why the hell aren't I rich?
Why are you not a millionaire? You've got people banging on about cross-play for PS4 and PS5 and you're going, did that 20 years ago, mate?
I'll tell you why, grassroots, it's not about the money.
No.
It's about having fun. So anyway, we've got that's what we figured. But the first day of this show, this is the second geek show we went to. It was actually their third year running, and so we've got sort of like this booth, one machine running Bopscotch, one machine running this rolling video from the year before because we're still pushing the arcade collection. We just were flat out the whole day. People were queuing up 3-4 rows deep around the chairs to play this thing. Mostly kids sort of like 8 to 10 would really hit a good demographic here. Bright colours, big loud farty noises, but otherwise family friendly. No violence, but very competitive. I mean the actual this was again a pre-alpha version. I'd hacked together the third race course the night before the show in the hotel room, which still exists actually in the game. And this course, it has actually turned out to be one of the toughest courses we've had. We've had grown men reduced to tears by this course. I think a couple nearly divorced over it as well. So sorry, but so the first day we're swamped. I've spent we went straight down to a gaming hardware shop after the game after the show had finished. Bought a couple more controllers. I spent the night hacking away, getting it working on a second machine, which was much lower spec. So the next day, we've got 2 Bopscotch machines, and we're still snowed under. And we've sort of like 3 days of absolute mental. Coming home, sort of like croaky voices going, "What the hell happened there?"
You really learned from your last one, then.
Yeah, and
that must be an amazing feeling, though. Like I say, someone who
not anything in the world,
creativity and artistic license, if you like, but to see something you've made just because a hobby, it interests you, and see it bringing joy to so many people, and actually, because you get a lot of expos where people walk past and go, "Oh, that looks good." Oh, queue's too big. I'm off to something else. But to actually have people hang around for their turn,
and and then going and then bringing their mates back and things like that. I mean, it was like that letter from Scotland all over again, but much more intimate. People coming back and sort of and. We don't, a lot of family players. One thing we noticed, this is something that you notice with these games. Mums in families, there's a special incantation they can use. There's a ritual they do. They first of all protest and say they don't want to play, and eventually they get put in the chair. At which point they say the magic words of "I'm no good at video games," pick up the controller and promptly wipe the floor with the opponent.
Yeah,
it's a majority thing. Not every time, but most of the time it happens.
I think it's that vulnerability thing to throw you off guard. Like, I don't know, am I pressing the right button? Whereas I've had it with not so much mums, but with like ex-partners. I'm thinking one ex-partner where she kicked my ass at Street Fighter. But then look at me going, yeah, she's looking at me going, am I pressing the right button? It's like, look at me.
She's just saying that to wind you up. It's, underneath there's a rubber mask with Zangief. But one of the things we got with Bopscotch was, is this coming out on Xbox 360 or is this coming out on PlayStation? And I just suddenly, hang on a minute, I've got this 4-year-old Xbox that hasn't been out of its brown paper yet. And I've got this PC version, which was backported from Monogame into XNA to run on the PC. This should just work on the Xbox.
Yeah, no porting needed. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there was a little bit of work around the edges to get it so that it met all the store subscription submission criteria. Xbox Live indie games as it was back then. Mm-hmm. So we released all 4 versions practically simultaneously in late 2014. And so that's Windows Phone, iPhone, Android, and Xbox 360. And the Xbox 360 one promptly outperformed all 3 mobile platforms by over 1,000-fold. So
nice.
I think it's just sort of like it just had the right niche there. Whereas the mobile thing, by that point, I think people were starting to get more into sort of like the rot was beginning to set into the mobile market. We took Bopscotch to a business to business show at one point. We won this table, which it was this tiny round table. We were later told that we'd have paid 1,200 quid for it, and we paid at this thing at the O2 in London. And where's us in our normal gear, and everyone else has got suited and booted, and people are trying to sell us user acquisition. Here is a market that has grown up about selling mobile developers installations of their games and things so that they can push themselves artificially inflate their position in the charts and thus get more discoverability. That is wrong when you have to buy your way up there. I know there's the whole philosophy of making a good game and marketing yourself well and all that, but if you can buy your way to it, that just goes against everything that I grew up with.
Yeah, it's the reason I do this. Like, I've built this small, tiny little platform in the corner of the internet. But if I can use that to get you 10 or 100 extra wish lists or downloads, then that's brilliant. And it's just getting people to see you and your thing. Like, I hate when people are like, I can sell you this and you can buy your way to the top. That's the spirit of the thing.
Yeah, and it just feels wrong because it's not making it on merits. That's the thing, and again it's part of the reason why we came up with this idea of grassroots, a grassroots studio, because, like I say, on one hand you've got the asset flippers who are literally releasing the same game with different skins. I've lost track of the amount of sort of like match 3 clones, merge clones, all that kind of stuff. And then at the other end of the scale, you've got guys who were ex-AAA coming out of the industry with all their connections, and they're effectively still a AAA studio. They just don't have a publisher. They're also indie. Yeah. So where does everything fit? Indie has gotten so broad. I feel it really does need to be chunked up a bit more, because otherwise, the whole discoverability thing has gone. There's thousands of games going up per day.
Yeah, there's an article I'm writing at the moment. I've been writing for the last couple of weeks. Which is working title at the moment is Have Indie Games Gone Corporate?
Well, it's funny you should say that. Read the Llamatron. So Jeff Minter, as I've alluded to, is God.
Mm-hmm.
Back when he released Lamatron for the Atari ST, there's this infamous README file where he basically goes on about how how it was back in the day when he was releasing on the Commodore 64 and the Spectrum, the ZX Spectrum, and all that, and how it is now, where and he's saying, I think his opening shots alongside all video games are designed for a theoretical 14-year-old entity called Darren, who doesn't care too much about complexity. He's just looking for the latest version of R-Type with different graphics, and will it work with a Kempston? For anybody under the age of sort of like 40, Kempston is a particular kind of joystick that works with the ZX. But and he was basically going on this bit of a diatribe about the state of the industry and why he was trying this shareware approach out for Lamatron. And it's basically gone around in a big circle, except, now indies are effectively, because the top-end indies are becoming the AAAs, as III implies. Yeah. And you've got a load of stuff hanging at the bottom. And because it's not moderated very well, because you can, like I said, Play Store, pay $25 and upload your sort of like tutorial game with different graphics, you've got a flood of stuff coming in because there's no entry barrier anymore. The game engines make it so easy. Mm-hmm. You don't even have to buy them anymore. You've lost the technological entry barrier, actually having to know what you're doing, and you've lost the financial entry barrier. So anybody and their brother can make a game if they wanted to, and then they are, because a lot of people see Minecraft, Flappy Birds, Angry Birds, all those sort of things, and think, well, if they can do that and make a mint, so can I.
Yeah, I remember the Flappy Bird one. Like, didn't the developer take the game down because of all the media attention it was getting, and then within 24 hours, there was like 1,000 Flappy Bird clones.
The one that I saw that made me, when he took it down, there was a flood of phones going up on eBay for ridiculous amounts with it installed. But the one that I actually remember, there was one I saw. There was one I saw for something like 2 million.
Oh, the highest I saw was like $5,000 or something.
I saw things going in the millions, but the one that sticks in my mind was one for £83,500. The reason why I remember that figure is because someone had bid on it. Someone wanted Flappy that bad. Either that or they'd messed something up, or probably they were, eBaying whilst drunk. It's a dangerous game. An ex-colleague of mine apparently bought a caravan for something like £10 off of eBay whilst drunk. Turned out to be this rundown old thing. The owners then phoned him up and said, "Can you come and get your property off our land, please?" They didn't want to get rid of it. They didn't want to afford to pay for dumping this thing, so they sold it on eBay for a knockdown price, and then.
That was brilliant.
Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy as well, but I digress. Anyway.
Yeah, we kind of got back. So where were we in the story? Sorry.
Yeah. So we've done the Bob Scotch got put onto the Xbox 360 and outperformed stuff, and it basically lit the console fire in our heads. There's me sort of like, Bob Scotch, great. I'm thinking to do what to do next, and the idea of Bullion actually came up halfway around a lake in Slovenia. This beautiful place called Lake Bled. If anybody can get over there when we can fly. I would highly recommend it, because it is one of the most beautiful places in the planet. I was on holiday out there with my missus, and I'm sort of like thinking, well, what do I do next? And she was, bless her, she's been an amazing sounding board. Shout out to my Mrs. Emma. She is an amazing, amazing woman, and that can go all over the internet.
Thank you, Emma.
And she's helping me brainstorm this thing, and at that point, Angry Birds was still very much in vogue, and so the word "angry" had floated into my mind. And I'm pretty sure I've told you this before, but I figured on the idea. Well, hang on, pirates, they're angry people. Bulls are angry animals. What happens if we mash them together? Wait a minute! Look at all the puns. Look at all the puns. Yeah, the light just went. But I didn't know what to do with this. For years, for a couple of years, I had this sort of like idea. I want to do something with pirate bulls. Didn't know what to do with it. Then my 40th birthday rolls around. So this is 2016 now. I've gone to Global Game Jam for the very first time. I treated myself to Global Game Jam for my 40th birthday, because my 30th birthday, planned this big party, invited all my mates. They started dropping out. It turned to be a complete washout. So I thought, rather than trying to do something with everybody I know, I'll try and do something I love with complete strangers and see what happens. And I met Matthew, who's sort of like the one of the main artists on Bullion. He's our 3D player character artist. He was on the team of that we put together in for Global that year. And yeah, I mean, obviously he's seen me rock up in sort of like Bopscotch t-shirts and with business cards and everything from the shows, so yeah, I've kind of like said to him, if we've swapped contact details, and a few months after Global, I've sort of like said, hey, I've got this idea. Do you fancy hearing me out on it? So I met him and another artist who would also work with at Global in this pub in London. Gave him sort of like this game breakdown, because at that point the game had actually the actual sort of like initial concept of the game had solidified in my mind, on the fighting over the island, over the treasure, that sort of thing. And I've actually put together a very rough cut alpha demo prototype in Unity, where it was literally capsules and an island, and you had sort of like the sword arm was just sort of like a long stick that went up and down, that sort of thing. But it showed and I said, right, this is the idea. These are the sort of characters. I had this little sort of like game design brief, which was no more than a side and a half of printout. I said, right, here's an idea that the characters I've kind of got in mind are kind of a little bit Johnny Bravo-esque in design, big chests and little legs and that sort of thing. And the only other thing I had was a name, Captain Long John Silverside. And I said,
Silverside beef.
Yeah, exactly. And I said to the guys,
when you get to turning age, when you get to about 40, you hit that perfect dad pun age, don't you?
I know, it's great, isn't it? But everyone at work hated me for it. I think they're glad in that lockdown because they don't get bugged by me coming up with the worst jokes. But yeah, so I've said to them, this is the concept, and I pitched it to them at the beginning. So because Bullion is, it's a revenue share, and that's a dirty word in many indie circles. But from the word go, I pitched it to them saying, I can't guarantee this is going to make a lot of money, or if at all. What it can do is put a published title on your CV, because we've got this history of making games and putting them up, and and doing whatever it takes to get them over the line. And that could then springboard you in, so if you want to go on and work in the industry, this will get you past that obstacle of published game.
But that revenue share kind of goes back to what you've been saying all along throughout your gaming career, if you like, is that this is purely for creative reasons and for hobby, not for, you're not setting out to make money. So you're not going to go, I could pay X amount of money for this because I'm doing this. This is a labour of love, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is,
if
though,
it makes money, brilliant. If it doesn't make money, look, my game's up there.
Yeah, exactly. But and it's fine when it's you and a mate doing that. But when you're approaching a complete stranger, apart from someone, albeit someone you've worked with for 48 hours pretty closely, and you're saying, I want to make this game. Here's what there's the whole ideas guy thing. Yeah. The stigma attached to that. And so that's why I went in with a prototype and say, look, this is something I've made, but I can't make it pretty. I knocked this together in a week. Imagine what we can do if you making it pretty and me spending the time on the code. So I went in with a solid pitch rather than being just an ideas guy and then saying, right, off you go and make this for me. It's indication that I can chip in and make it all the way to the end. Yeah. So 3 months later, we've met up again, and Matthew has produced this nearly 100-slide deck from PowerPoint of all this research he's done, character research, the ideas, concept sketches. And
so he's truly bought into your pitch then?
Oh God, yeah.
Either that or you bought him enough beer in that pub.
He doesn't drink.
Oh,
he drinks
really? That's been a good pitch.
Well, I think the fact that we'd worked together, because what happened was Global. When we did this project, the Global Game Jam, what tends to happen? Global Game Jam had this reputation. You'd have these really grandiose ideas, but forget that you've only got 48 hours to make it, and then you run into trouble sort of like about 24 hours in. Then you scratch and you basically hack something together in the last 6 hours. Whereas the team was sort of like was getting together and getting to know each other a bit. Sort of like we've got this idea, but we weren't quite sure what we were going to get to. What we were going to get to with it. And I said to him, right, I know how to do agile project management because it's what we do in my day job at the time. And if you let me help you manage this, then we can make sure that this works out. And I basically in Bullion, I'm known for having it for being sort of like not just a programmer, but also chief post-it note wrangler. They recognise nothing I can't solve without if I use post-its, you know. And so I literally wrote out every little bit of the game that we were going. It broke the game down into bits, sort of like make landscape, make player character move around, do this, do that. And we literally wrote out about 50 post-it notes and put them all up on the wall in a great big line and move them, you know, and mark them over as who was, you know, whether it was a coding thing or a graphics thing or whatever, and who was going to take it. And we started moving them across the, you know, from sort of like a to-do to in progress to done. It's called Kanban, if you a Kanban board, if you might not have come across it. But you know, a lot of devs work that way now. And so literally we could see where we were compared with the time and keep it completely under control. And we didn't move, I think we closed something like about 2/3 of those, it got 2/3 of those things all the way across the board. And whilst we didn't finish the game completely, we had I think it was a 3-level prototype with original graphics, the music I think we stole from somewhere, and the sound effects we stole, but it had voice acting. The whole thing, you know, the whole prototype, it wasn't just a prototype, it was something that was technically demoable, you know, it wasn't just capsules, it actually looked the parts. And so I think that's part of the reason Matthew bought into it, because he could see, you know, A, I've got this history, and B, I could see, yeah, I could run the project.
One of the things, sorry, I'm going to butt in and go to I've been to a game jam once. It was only like a 4-hour game jam.
Mm-hmm. Right. Can't do much in 4 hours.
No, it was all on paper. There was no coding. It was just all on paper and making an idea. But the reason I went along to it is one of my friends was running it in Leeds, and I was like, do you know what? I can I come along at this? I'm not a coder and I can't make games, but my job is criticizing the games that people make. I review games, and I do that from a player's perspective. I'd love to be able to see like the gaming, like the development side of it is a little bit in me, and I was in so much awe of the creativity. We had like 4 teams, and it was all on paper and stuff. But we ended up with one team had like half the room taken up. They built an entire solar system of planets and different environments and different. I was blown away by the creativity in just 4 hours.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. You know, that the buzz of that first global was amazing. I mean, I've had some good ones and some bad ones since, and unfortunately, moving away from the London area hasn't helped matters on that. But you know, I've
still got the notebook somewhere from that game jam, which I looked at and came out and went, "That'd make a fucking great game."
Yeah.
Like, it's there, like pretty much the game design's there. It's all on paper, but like that'd be brilliant. I've never got around to learn how to make it.
Well, coming back to the year that to Botchscotch again for a second. On the stand next to us was I forget what the studio's called, but the game was called the game was Timmy Bibble's Friendship Club, which was sort of it was a 4-person competitive multiplayer game. Again, you know, this is us learning all the time. And the idea was you basically had a number of very fast fire rounds, and you had these 4 players, and they're basically just shooting each other. You had sort of like a slappers only version and that sort of thing. And this was the first year that they ran an indie a Best in Show Indie award at this particular show, and basically these guys took it but that game started off in a game jam, and then they polished it up and made it into a full release in the end. So I'll have to look up where that's who made that. I can't remember now, but they just swept us away in terms of the competition.
So Matthew's turned up. He's bought into the pitch. He's turned up with like 150 slides. Yeah,
so he's come back with this huge slide deck, and we're just looking at it. And so we basically decided to go for it. And this is sort of like now about mid 2016. So I've started coding away, and I've said to Matthew that, hey, what do we think we can do? And he started working on the model and the setup for Long John Silverside. And we got to a point around sort of like December time, because I'm still in London at this point, and we're meeting up on sort of like we've got a team meeting, a full team meeting that just so happens to be in a pub every month.
Shucks.
And then every week I was then meeting another one of the team, because I was meeting up with Paul, and then I was meeting up with Matthew, and then we added a sound engineer that I found at sort of like a game networking event. Who unfortunately he's moved on. He was from the States. He went back to the States, and then he kind of just dropped off the radar, which is a shame, really. But that's the way these things go sometimes. So we had there was the four of us, and every month, every week I'll be meeting one of them or having the team meeting, and we got to a point around December where it was a case of, if we push real hard, we can get, we'd got the first environment and most of Long John Silverside by that point, and a lot of the code mechanics were there, but they were rough and buggy, but they were there. And I said to Matthew, right, there's this show that we've done every year until now. If we can get to this over the line, I can put together a very rough cut title sequence on it, and what we'd do is we'd just do 4 different versions of the same character in different colours, and we could demo this. And he's sort of like he's not sure what to think of it, and but we've gone for it, and we've actually managed to get this thing over the line in time for this show in sort of like mid to late February. And we've taken Matthew and Ben, this sound engineer, on, and so we've become a bit old hands at this by now, having done a few. But they're subjected to the whole sort of like, oh my god, people are playing my game, sort of, and that buzz. And so that was Bullion's first show, and we had our little pop-up roller banner, like we do. And
does that go on to feed creativity then? Is that, not creativity, enthusiasm? Is it sort of like,
oh, God,
this for a while and it's dropping, and then suddenly all these people playing it, we've got something here, people enjoy this, I'm going to forget. Suddenly Matthew's working twice as hard as he was before, kind of.
It turned out the next 3 power-up graphics in the hotel. So there's that, and we've covered the back of the pop-up notes, the pop-up sign in Post-it notes for all the bugs that people had spotted, and I actually ended up pretty much rewriting. So this is like February 2017. I ended up pretty much rewriting the entirety of the main player control system to get, rather than trying to fix these bugs, because there was so much hacked code to get this thing into a demoable shape. And then literally out of the blue, Replay have turned up for Play Manchester, which was sort of like September time, I think, that back then, and said, hey, we're doing some free indie booths at Play Expo 2017. And I'm thinking, oh my God, can we get this thing, is this new build going to be ready?
This Play Expo Manchester?
Yeah.
This is the first time we met.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. So, we're gradually closing on. It's only taken, an hour or so far.
Wasn't, at that point, when I first met you, wasn't it still Long John Silverside in different colours?
Yeah. So it's still Long John Silverside. I think we might have just had the second island in, but it was very much in prototype. It was just the landmass.
I think I remember like a sand island, and I think you might have been showing off the bayou swamp.
Yeah, the swamp island. Yeah. And that was literally just most of that was placeholders. It was Matthew had done we didn't have an environment artist at that point. Matthew had done the model up for the actual landmass, and we'd used the palm trees from the previous island and bought a couple of sort of like hut shape assets from from one of the asset stores and put them on. And we're using sort of like a little tiki man for the bad guys and that. So
going back to what you're saying about what you learned from, I can't remember the name. You mentioned Sandwich.
You're talking World of Sandwiches, yeah. Chompy Chomp Chomp was their game.
Going back to what you learned from them was when I met you at Play Expo Manchester in 2017. I didn't actually know anything about you. My diary was full. I booked in to meet people that day who emailed me and booked in. But here were these guys with these big banners and these pirate hats on. Yeah. And you were like, everyone stood at their table kind of, come play my game, and you guys were sort of like 2 or 3 foot out going, have you seen this?
Yeah.
Fighting balls, have you seen it?
Yeah.
You guys I've got some time for you at 3 o'clock. Can I get back to you? And that's how I discovered you, was like, so you'd learned from that.
Well, put it this way, right? Paul and I were in the hotel that morning, the second morning of the show, and this chap's come over and introduced himself, and he's basically saying, yeah, I've got this venture going. I've got contacts in Nintendo. I can get this on the Switch if you can get it completed within sort of like 12 months. And I just thought, Paul and I, we went back up to the hotel room, ran the numbers, and it's a case of, no, there's no way we can do that. We can't do that. Even, we don't have the capital, we don't have the backing, we don't have anything. But so that was but having people come to us, and again, and Paul and I work as kind of a double act. He shows them through the game, and I'm if we were Ghostbusters, right? I'd be Venkman. He'd be Spengler, and we both have a bit of Ray stance as well. So I'm the gobby one, and he's the smart one. I mean, he's part of Bullion. Sorry,
it's a good mix to have.
Yeah, it is. I mean, his contribution to Bullion has been a lot of the AI work. So the behaviours that drive the computer-driven players and all that sort of thing that make them. Because what we didn't want. When we set out to do AI players, we didn't want to make it so that it was like a lot of games back in the day where the AI, take Worms, for example. That's the thing we always draw from. It would be absolutely rubbish until you got it down to about half the team, and all of a sudden its bazooka shots would suddenly start hitting bang on every time, and you'd get absolutely annihilated. We wanted an AI that played reasonably fair all the way through. So, I mean, that's why you've got all the camera cuts going in and out of Bullion as well, because it's not just to show, so it does close-ups when the action's all close in. It's a case of everything that the computer's aware of, the player should be able to see as well.
Yeah.
So we try and make it so that there's no unfair advantages for the AIs. But 2017, like I said before, we actually had Jeff Minter come over and play, which was sort of like my yay moment. We kept on progressing from there. We met so Ben, the sound engineer, departed, so we were down to one Ben again, and then we picked up another Paul, who's our environment artist, and so he finished off the build of Salty Swamp and made it look all beautiful. So I don't know whether you saw it at Blackpool or just how much of it you saw, but we've that's now got a beautiful, great waterfall feature on it, and we had another character artist, a chap called Stuart, who again has moved on, unfortunately for us, but fortunately for his own career. He's moving on. He made new enemies for the first two islands, so Yucatan and Salty Swamp. So we now have undead parrot skeletons and crocodile men. And he also did the first two bosses for the first two boss battles that we're putting in.
I think I saw you 2017 in Manchester.
Mm-hmm.
I then saw you 2018 in Blackpool. Did I see it 2018? And also you
2018 in Blackpool. Yes, that's it.
And then 2019 in Blackpool was the last time I saw you. I don't see you in 2019.
No,
it
can't be. Because we've just spent the year in lockdown. Yeah, it must have been 2019 and not 2018. Sorry, I lose track.
I didn't see you 2020 because I remember seeing 2019 looked. 2017 looked like you had a pretty decent bit of a game here, like an idea for a game. Yeah. 2019 looked like this is almost ready to go. Yeah.
I mean, we're now at the stage where it is a lot of it is plugging in content, and the coding is all custom coding for things like boss battles and unique features. That 2017 was the first real test of what was what has become effectively the finished game kernel, the guts of the core of the game, and the rest of it's been bolting stuff on. So yeah, like I said, we picked up an environmental artist, another character artist who did these enemies and also did another one of the player characters. So we started adding to the player character suite. So we're now up to 4 playable characters with the fifth and sixth design. So we're hoping to get we're hoping to have a minimum of 6 playable characters when we actually pull the trigger on this. We've got 5 playable arenas now. Most of which have been put together by this chap Paul. So the next, so once Salty Swamp was done, we then did Ragu Ruins, which is on top of a mountain top. So we broke away from the whole sort of like must be on an island idea. So if you fall off the edge, you get sort of like almost this Roadrunner effect of them sort of like. So we've got Chili Con Carnage, which which I know you saw at Blackpool. It wasn't ready to play back then. We unveiled that at the last show we did.
Yeah, I think you turned one of the demos off on the laptop and gave me a sneak peek at that one.
Yeah, because we were thinking about it, but it just wasn't ready to go. But yeah, I think you saw the environments, but what you didn't see was all the finished effects. So what happens with that one? Chili Con Carnage lives up to its name because basically you've got these 5 volcanoes. 4 little ones and 1 big one. The 4 little ones fire in these sort of like little fireballs, which are what the enemies hatch from. And periodically, the big one goes off and floods the entire playing field, apart from a couple of little spaces with lava. Yeah.
Is it possible to push? Like, I'm assuming this space only fits 1 person, so can you push another person off?
No, there's space. There is actually enough space for all the players to stand on each of these things. However, are you going to stand right next to the guy who's got more treasure, or are you going to shiv him in the back?
Yeah.
So basically,
I'm just realised,
the enemies are fireproof.
Sorry, I just realised we've spoke a lot about how Bullion come to life, and we've not actually said what Bullion is.
That's what happens when because we keep crossing paths like this.
Yeah. So, but just for people. I'm sorry, but yeah, you've just kind of like we spoke about the levels and the characters and everything. It's brilliant to hear the history of this. Well, people say, "Oh, much going." Well, that's great, that's brilliant, but what the fuck is this game?
See, this is what happens when you ask me to talk about history of Leda and all that stuff. I ramble. I did warn you. How many of those terabytes are left now?
Oh, there's plenty. It's fine. It's about half a gig left.
Okay, well, as people probably picked up by now, so Bullion involves pirate balls and fighting. So, the idea is that it is a 4-player local multiplayer co-op / competitive game. So what we found works quite well with previous games is that Astro Swag, for example, balancing 2 mechanics one against the other, rather than having sort of like one dedicated idea. So in Bullion, it's not your standard arena brawler in last man standing. It is whoever gets the most treasure, because obviously pirates treasure. So you're running around smashing open treasure chests and grabbing all the treasure. And what you want to do is be the one at the end of the round with the most treasure, be that a timed round or a boss round. And if you die, you lose a bit of your treasure. So you also turn into a ghost, and you can't collect treasure as a ghost until you've respawned, which either fires automatically after a few seconds, or if you can get back to your spawn point quicker, so all the better. So you're running around collecting treasure, and you're also trying to avoid getting knifed by your fellow pirates. So because they won't want you getting too far ahead, and similarly, you're trying to knife the guys who are ahead. You're also working against local enemies or bosses or whatever. And if the whole crew dies at the same time, so all 4 player characters are in ghost mode at the same time, the game ends and there's no winner. So you've got to try and keep at least one person alive.
So can you work as a team to defeat
Yes.
the boss? And then right in the dying second, I can just stab them with 3 players and take all the loot?
Assuming you can kill them quickly enough. 3 versus 1 is not good odds.
Yeah, but I'm assuming they think we're all part of a team, we're working this together, and then at the last minute I just go, no, we're not.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, imagine how a real pirate crew would work. They work together to take the ship, and then they fight over the loot at the end of it. So yeah, you could call this an accurate simulation of pirate life in many ways. Maybe not, but. Yeah, the idea, like I say, is you've got to compete over the amount of treasure, but you've got to cooperate to stop the whole crew wiping out, because that's the whole thing over in its tracks. So it's
this one of my favourite categories of games. I'm sure people watching maybe mention quite a lot of times is I call this a beer and pizza game.
Yes, exactly that. Exactly that.
So there's no plans to make this online play or anything, or?
It really depends. I mean, online play has been discussed a few times, and it'll be, if it happens, it'll be a later ad. The other alternative is if we decide to go down the PC route. From what I understand, there's a facility on Steam that turns any local multiplayer into an online multiplayer without. But we haven't really researched that. I just remember seeing that when it was first announced and just going, "Oh, that looks interesting. I'll have to look into it at some point."
I mean, I suppose you could do it with a PlayStation where you can share play for an hour.
And there's ways and means. But I mean, what we found with Bopscotch was that the idea of people competing together, and also as a spectator sport, that kind of vibe of having people social playing. A lot of that's been lost in I think in the online stuff. It's like as I said, I was a World of Warcraft addict for several years. And I mean, 2 words: Baron's chat.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, World of Warcraft was a terror for this because I got into it quite not right at the start, but in the vanilla years, and you used to be able to hang out with people, and chat to people, and you'd be able to get dungeon groups quite easily, and you go and do your raids and your instances and that sort of thing, and that was great. And you'd level up and you'd learn through these instances along the way. And then it started changing character, and it became more about you'd grind your way up through the levels, not being able to get dungeon groups because this was before sort of like the group finder existed. And then you'd hope that you'd try and get into a guild and hope that you would actually be able to hang in there long enough to learn how to play the character as part of a team to get involved in serious raiding. And it all became about the numbers and the technicalities, and I stopped enjoying it.
Yeah, I started, I think it was I wasn't right at the beginning. I was near the beginning with Warcraft. I think I stopped a couple of months after Leech King for exactly the same reasons.
Yeah, about the same time as me then. But it was just sort of like it felt so impersonal. And the chat line, the chat windows were, instead of sort of like being just people hanging out, it got really sort of like either childish or aggressive or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, that's not what we want. We want to, we want that old spirit back. We're old fogies at heart. We like the idea of when people used to sort of like play against each other, sort of like your joust era and stuff like that.
Well, that's why I have that. I suppose there's a genre I've made up of like beer and pizza games because it's that sitting down and playing Mario Kart. And
exactly. I mean,
that winner stays on kind of thing as well. I quite like it.
Exactly.
Play something like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. Winner stays on, and you're being on for an hour. Right, we're going to do this guy. Let's have him. Come on,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is exactly what we're going for with this. And when Bopscotch started getting that kind of vibe, I mean, people were actually saying, that it had a very sort of like similar hook to Mario Kart on the earlier Mario Kart, so, in terms of the speed and the feel of it and the colourfulness and everything. And so we just thought, this is the angle we want to be working on. We want to be working for, primarily a younger market. Mm-hmm. But something that sort of like the older players might enjoy as well, just as a social, or families can play. It doesn't have to be super realistic.
I'd say that the bits I've played a bit, but I've seen is at Play Expos has been. Mm-hmm. It strikes me as a very family game. It's something that dad and son and mum can play together.
Exactly what we're looking for.
It's not like dad's playing Fortnite and mum don't know the buttons. It's kind of like you can all sit down as a family and play this. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, until we actually wired up a lot of it, you could play the whole thing with. And obviously there is more finesse to it. You can play the whole thing with just the direction of the stick and mashing the attack button. Mm-hmm. And get started and win rounds. But there are tricks. There are tricks and things you can pick up, learning the proper cadence of the attacks to time for damage boosts. Using the dash facility that we recently baked in, using the block and counter attack mechanics, using the power ups correctly. So it's not just something that it's not just it can start out as a simple button mash and you can just get into it real quick. But you've got the scope there for opening a lot more stuff up. And then one of the latest things, which I'm gutted we haven't had a chance to bring this to a show because this is the sort of thing that I think is really going to boost it along. we've introduced Voyage Mode recently. So the idea is that you go through a series of islands, much like your Mario Kart tournaments and cups and that sort of thing. And some of them will be boss, and some of them will be regular sort of like timed rounds. And it's whoever wins the most on those islands. But unlike the other sort of like cup games, if you get to an island and the whole crew wipes, game over still. So the voyage stops at its tracks.
So you say you get like 4 random islands.
Well, not random. You get a city.
So it's not like Mushroom Cup. Like, say you do the Mushroom Cup Mario Kart, you get the 4 tracks. Whoever's got the most points wins. But you could be on the last. You could be on the 4th island. The whole team wipes. The tournament never happened.
Yeah, and that's again playing on that cooperative mechanic. It's sort of like we're almost there, guys. What happens at the end? Boom.
Boom. Yeah.
So. Yeah, and I can see controllers getting thrown across the room with that one. But considering when I was testing Botchgotch on mobile, I very nearly rage quit my own game on many occasions. You know, I can live with that.
You were just talking, before I interrupt you, I'll describe what Bullion was. You were just talking, I think you were just about to mention Davy Jones's locker.
Working through the different levels.
The different levels. Sorry,
yeah.
I might have jumped ahead.
So Chilicon Carnage is, like I say, is a volcano level.
It's carnage.
Yeah, and I mean, when we took that to the last show we did, that was sort of like the latest feature, and it was carnage, you know. But yeah, the locker is the latest one. It's almost finished. We're just working it. The last thing we need to add is making sure that the players can't leave the playing area. We're going to put sort of like giant squid tentacles around it that sort of like grab and crush the players when if they try and walk too close to the edge. So more hazards, but it's set underwater. Now, we haven't gone down the traditional route of slowing people down or making them float, because that would just destroy the game's fluidity. So what we've done is sort of like some clever lighting effects to give it sort of like that undersea vibe, and obviously you know, it looks the part with all the scene setting. And the other factor behind it is that you need to find air bubbles to keep your character having enough breath to keep going. So the most dangerous bit's actually at the start of the round, especially because the other thing we haven't finished yet, I forgot about this. We haven't actually set up the bit with the AI players to make them go after the bubbles yet.
So they'll just die.
Yeah, so 15 seconds in, they all die simultaneously.
Yeah, that needs fixing.
Yeah, well, it's on the roadmap. Paul's working on that next, you know.
I love the idea of sort of like just like father and son fighting each other. I'm going to stop. Need some air. Right, let's go. Fight again.
Yeah, very much so. But I mean, the other thing, we've actually found a new character artist for the enemies now. Who she's come on board just in time to get stuck in on the locker. So we basically said we need an underwater stage enemy. What are your thoughts? And she's come up with these crab men that work really nicely, and they kind of like pop up through it. They kind of like hang out in stealth mode near the chests and pop up out of the ground when the players get too near them. So they'll think, oh, everything's nice and cool and clear, and then all of a sudden you go for the chest and suddenly boom, boom, there they are. And the other thing is, you have to be careful with how you attack them, because if you do too much damage to them in too quick a time, they get enraged and they'll just sort of like start swinging wildly and go through a period of invulnerability. So they are actually right tough beggars to take down.
I was just thinking it straight off the top of my head. I was just thinking, like you were saying, this is anyone can pick up and play it, but quite hard. It's a lot of skill to master it.
Yeah.
Could I, once I play through it, I know those crabs are there.
Yeah.
Could I just run at those chests, activate the crabs, and then run behind my crew so the crabs hit them?
Well, it's you who activated them, so it's you who they're targeting, I'm afraid, you know.
Right, so they're not targeting the nearest person. So I was thinking, like, I'll activate them, then I'll run and hide behind you, so they'll come to the first person in front of them.
I forget the exact specs behind them, but each of the enemies have their own sort of like the AI engine that Paul's put together is actually it's really nice what he's done. It works on this idea of having lots of different behaviors, and it picks sort of like the most appropriate one for the situation, without going too much into the technical details. But what that allows us to do is create each behavior individually and then test it. So at the moment, I'm halfway through testing sort of like one of the final behaviors of the second boss. and I can plug that in right at the start of the battle, so I could just make sure it works. And then when I know that they all work, I can then put them in the right sequence.
Yeah.
So some of the enemies have the behavior that says, right, swap targets if another player crosses your path when you're on your way to your current target.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them don't. So yeah, makes these guys, especially if you've given them a bit of a dig, they tend to come after you. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're still fine tuning them. So this is how we do the shows.
It was just the evil player in me going, you think they're a hindrance? I'm going to turn them into a weapon.
you want a hindrance turned into a weapon, right? The Fountain of Youth power-up is the only one that you can keep when you're dead, because it resurrects you on the spot and gives you a full health.
Mm-hmm.
When you hit your respawn point or you resurrect, to stop spawn campers, there's a blast wave effect that knocks any enemies and players near you back. So what you can do as a ghost, you can't be attacked. If you've got the Fountain of Youth, the Water of Life power up, and you've got a big cluster of treasure and people are moving towards it, you can run into the middle as a ghost, wait until they're almost on top of it, fire that blast back effect and hoover everything up whilst they're still recovering.
Nice. I like that.
You know, little touches like that.
Touches that make it from being easy to pick up to play to this is something I'm going to master.
Yeah. I mean, what you'll typically see at these shows is people will do sort of like the one. In fact, we don't even talk about sort of like the dash button or the block button. We just say move, hit things, and there you go. And anybody who wants to learn a bit more can do. But you'll typically get two kinds of players. You'll get the ones that want to get in there and fight stuff, and this is probably why the mums are so good at this. They'll walk around. They'll just sneak around, pick up all the loose treasure that's gotten dropped, and then all of a sudden they'll have sort of like about 100 pieces of treasure, whereas everyone else is down on sort of like 50 or so, and the round will end, and they're sort of like, well, how come? Oh my God, she's wonderful.
This reminds me of sort of like playing Destruction Derby on the PlayStation 1, where everybody dives into the middle. I'd be the guy that reverses.
Yeah.
Everyone dives in, and then I'd go around the outside.
Yeah. So what is really cool about because these shows, the reason why we got it onto the show floor as soon as we did, because I know people have been asking, when's this going to come out? What we're doing with it? As Cyberpunk has shown, we don't want to cyberpunk ourselves.
I think a lot of release dates have gone back a bit because of Cyberpunk.
Yeah. So we've got we're using this as an opportunity to gain interactive feedback as well. And I mean, obviously, people find stuff that we miss, especially that first alpha showed us a lot of bugs.
That was going to be my next question. You mentioned earlier that you had post-it notes on the back of the banners.
Yeah.
Bugs and stuff. How much has the game changed from your vision of the game to then people actually playing it and going, you're not supposed to play it like that. Oh shit, people play it like this. We need to change stuff.
I think we're still pretty much in line with the initial concept. Originally, it was good. Theme-wise, it's changed. Originally, it was going to be all cows and bulls. It was going to be all cows and bulls, and then Stuart, the enemy character artist at the time, came up with the idea of the parrot skeletons, and it was a case of, we could really branch out here. And then Paul, the environment artist, came up with the idea of putting Ragu ruins on top of a mountain, and we just thought, we don't have to have just islands. We don't, and I think the only thing that's actually really changed in terms of the mechanics was each of the carrier each character was supposed to be able to perform a signature move, the bull rush, which it basically imagines sort of like a bull in a bull ring, an enraged bull. They get down on all fours and they charge in a straight line at wherever for a given distance. And the idea originally was that you use that, it would charge up, you'd use that, and you would basically smash through any chests, knock any enemies out of the way, but you'd keep going until the gauge ran out. And if you hit any solid object, you'd be stunned. Due to a few animation difficulties and a bit of player feedback, we've changed it so that they're not on all fours, they're just running head down, but still on both legs. And we've made it so that you've got a little bit of control, so once the gauge has been a quarter used up, you can take your thumb off the button.
And save that
is about the only change that we've made in terms of the game concept works.
But
We'll just add it to it.
What I was asking about how it's changed from players playing it. So the reason I started is that I've played a lot of games at expos and stuff as an interviewer and stuff, and I've brought quite a few. And I remember, but one, I'm not going to mention about Gateway because I don't want to embarrass the guy or anything, but this guy was talking me through his game. Oh, you need to do this here and do this here. And I came to this, like, there's a legend, like, oh, this is the boss now. So you need to come down and you need to figure out the pattern that she hits you in. And I jumped over, instead of jumping down, I jumped over the boss and just started hitting her. And she couldn't turn around.
Yeah.
And they were like, we need to change that. Hang on a minute.
Yeah.
You got any moments like that where you sat there and gone, you're not supposed to play it like that. You're not.
We've never had any that you're not any that it's sort of like you're not supposed to play it like that, because I mean, let's face it, there's only so much there's only so much you can do wrong in a sword fight.
Yeah.
There's very little. I mean, because it is ultimately that there's no specific sort of like level layouts or puzzles or any. It is literally get in there and hit things. And be they chests to scoop up the treasure, or be they enemies, there's not really much.
I suppose that if you're running and like start swinging your sword, or you walk around the edge, it's still the same game mechanic. You're not breaking it.
Yeah, exactly. Because what will happen if you're sneaking around the edge, someone is bound to notice at some point that your treasure counter is really high and target you.
Yeah.
The other thing is that. One thing that we're working towards, and this is again part of this AI stuff that's so cool. Underneath the hood, there is actually a set of sort of like rules and regulators that are ticking away. They don't do much at the moment, but they're watching all the players' behaviours, and and when we've finished implementing it, it will be tuning the enemy's behaviours based on what the players do. And so, what will happen? The first thing we're going to do, for example, is if there's certain areas where the players are commonly congregating, then we'll start popping up the chests on the other side of the map to get them moving around. We can make it so that enemies start preferring to, if there's one runaway leader, we can have enemies start targeting them. Oh,
how about to ask, so if you're amassing all the treasure, you're the loot leader.
Yeah.
Then DAI is going to come for you.
Yes, and I mean the other thing that we're considering, of course, as well, and this is this is very much in its infancy, is obviously people with consoles, people are looking at signing into their accounts and using certain characters and that sort of thing. If we can watch how the game's played over time, we can then tune over series of games the gameplay, so it starts responding and changing the way it plays according to the way it's being played.
That's very smart.
It's been around for years. Look at Defender.
Yeah, I know, but I like that. It's a case of the game you can't cheese the game, so to say, because the game's going to learn how you play.
That's kind of what we're looking for, yeah. But the other side of it is that, another thing we're looking at the moment is longevity. Mm-hmm. So, great, you've got, say, 6 islands, 6 playable characters to explore, and each island has a time-bound mode and a boss battle, right? Now, say you play each one of those, every possible combination. So each character, I did the maths and I worked it out as if you did every single one once, it would work out at something like 3 to 5 hours of total gameplay time. Mm-hmm. Which, you compare that to your average game, and most people expect loads of like hours and hours of content and that sort of thing. So obviously, being a couch game, the rules are a bit different, and I think we're still fine with that, because you look at Mario Kart, there's
yeah. I have this, and I know a lot of people have a go at me for this pound per hour rule that I have.
Yeah.
But I have a £5 per hour rule on gaming.
Right.
Which there's not much you can do in the UK for £5 an hour.
No.
But if I'm spending 20 quid on a game and getting 4 hours of gameplay out of it, well,
yeah.
But if I'm paying 60 quid on a game and getting 60 hours of gameplay, I'm getting my value for money. So it's something like Bullion is, I'm not going to sit down and play it like I'll play something like Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Yeah.
But every time I've got, well, when we get back to being able to have friends round and beer and pizza.
Maybe better look at it online option after all.
Yeah, I'm not going to pull out Assassin's Creed Valhalla when I've got friends round.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the way we're
I'm
thinking.
going to put on Bullion. So I'm probably going to get, over the lifetime of having Bullion, I'm probably going to get 100 hours out of it.
Yeah, I mean, we know that we're not going to, we know that we've got only a certain amount of content. And we are looking post-release now at what we can, what more we can add in terms of more islands, more bosses, more things. We also created this idea, the Voyage Mode idea, to give sort of like that, to give that extra flex in what we've already got. Because, I mean, 6 islands, say you've got 3 in a voyage, that gives a lot of possibility all of a sudden. And then, from that, you can then start looking at things like achievements and badges, which are based on certain combinations of wins and that sort of thing. So there's potentially a lot of things that could add to that longevity via unlockables and things like that.
Mm-hmm. I think there's like I said, there's a prospect of DLC, of new characters, new islands.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what have you found is the biggest challenge in making Bullion? Because you've had a long career. I don't
use the word I think you're looking for.
I don't use the word career in game because it's not your career, it's your hobby.
Yeah.
But you've essentially have had a career in gaming.
Yeah, the challenge has been. I mean, this is Leda's first 3D game. It's our first game in Unity. It's our first time operating on a team outside of just me and Paul. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that we're doing for the first time and working out as we go along. It's the first thing that we've managed at this kind of scale, and so.
Is it fair to say this is Leda's most ambitious game?
Yeah, probably. I mean, each game has been different in many ways. I mean, looking back through it, Botskotch, that was, the ambitious part of that was this connecting the phones together. Mm-hmm. The arcade collection prior to that was looking at a different way of making, with this pay for credits thing. There's always been some kind of new challenge or new, be it technical or be it sort of like from a gameplay approach. And that's what drives us. That's what it's always been, right down to the to the old days of me and Paul rubbing each other's noses in what we've created.
You're one of the indie devs that epitomizes why I love indie games. Because I've always said, like, if you want to know what AAA games are going to do in 3 to 5 years' time, look at what indie devs are doing.
Version of whatever they've already done.
Yeah, so you were doing in-app purchases before mobile games were doing in-app purchases. You were doing crossplay before crossplay was a thing. You're doing, it's all these, everything we're getting. Like, you could argue, I suppose, the biggest example of that is like Fortnite was an indie game, I suppose, when it got released.
Yeah.
But now Call of Duty has a battle royale in it, and
yeah. I mean, it's about obviously there are certain things that just click at the right time. I mean, Fortnite is a prime example. Minecraft,
mm-hmm.
On the mobile, Angry Birds, Flappy Birds, that sort of thing. There's just things the stars align. Who knows? It's one of those things that just sort of like. I mean, obviously, yeah, Minecraft introduced the building mechanic, but Fortnite is their battle royale thing. So it's just people having the right idea at the right time, and if we get. We're not setting out to set the world on fire with Bullion. I mean, if we know that there's lots of different multiplayer brawlers and that sort of thing out there. Hopefully, this idea of competitive, cooperative, flipping between the two mechanics is going to be our little niche, our little thing.
Yeah, I do like that. I like it. We'll work together as long as working together is profitable.
Yeah.
And then we become enemies. Yeah.
I mean,
like the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yes, something like that. And what really will start playing into that a lot is when you hit the boss battles, because there's going to be certain strategies that will involve multiple players,
mm-hmm.
And to get the best effect out of them. But certain times within the boss, the bosses are kind of like treasure pinatas, right? Mm-hmm. But at certain points in their sort of battle sequence. They will release what we're calling the BFD, the big diamond, and it's whoever gets the hit to release that will automatically be granted that. So, it's not a treasure you have to pick up. It pings out.
So it's not a case of I get the hit, it drives out, and you go mine.
No, it's the one unit of piece of treasure that can't be stolen in the entire game, and so everyone will be competing to try and get that hit. So you can sort of like get everyone wailing away on the boss, and all of a sudden you get the meter down just before the diamond, and all of a sudden the action stops because they're all sort of like
Strikes out the window now. We all want that hit.
Yeah. So there's lots of things to play with. I mean, DLC wise, again, sticking to our grassroots kind of mentality and rules. We're not looking at charging at skins. We're charging for skins if we go down the route of having different character skins, different skins on the different characters. We're certainly not going to be doing any kind of mechanics which will allow you to buy something that puts your character at an advantage to another player.
Yeah, they've got to be purely like any character be cosmetic or balanced. Yeah.
The only other things that we're looking at which might have a cost against it will be going old school, level packs, character packs. So if we've introduced, say, a couple of new levels and a new playable character, that might have a little bit extra on top of it, just a little price tag on top of it, just because to recognise the fact that we've got these people who aren't actually part of Leda Entertainment. They're not on signed contracts or anything, because Leda Entertainment is an official trading company, but these guys who are all working with us on this. They've thrown their hats into the ring based on this idea of getting this published title. They are contributing to it. I mean, obviously, we've got the appropriate agreements and stuff in place, but the idea is that we are, there's no false illusions. There will be revenue share, and they deserve, seeing as most of this new stuff is graphic content and sound content, they deserve their share. They deserve a bit of kickback.
I think a lot of gamers buy into that. I know myself and a lot of gamers that I know were like, first it comes to my head is Rocket League.
Mm-hmm.
That came out on as a PS Plus game on launch.
Mm-hmm.
So we got that game for free and we were playing it hundreds of hours. And then the time went, there's a DeLorean for £3.69.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking, I'll have a DeLorean. I want a DeLorean.
Yeah.
There's a Batmobile for £3.69. I don't really care about a Batmobile, but I've got 300 hours on this game. I'll give you £3.69. Thank you for the game.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of gamers will feel like that. It's been like, I'm not really too bothered about this new character or this new, but I'll give you £3. I'll give you £5 because I've had a lot of me and my family love this game. Yeah,
I mean it's it's the exact sort of like we do have a target release date in mind. Obviously, we're not actually pulling the trigger on anything like that yet until we know what's going on with this ridiculous COVID situation for starters.
Well, I've got a couple of questions out. I was gonna get to. I'm gonna get to launch date in a bit. So my next, I just asked you what the biggest challenge was. I want to ask you what the easiest thing about making Bullion was.
The easiest thing.
It's always the hardest question.
I think the easiest thing about making Bullion was was probably coming up with the ideas once we'd actually got the basic concept of we want to do a game where once we got the concept it's going to be Pirate Bulls and it's going to be competing over treasure and there's going to be these mechanics. It was then coming up with sort of like, well, who are these characters going to be? What are the islands going to be or the arenas going to be like? Because the beauty of working in this team and working in this way, the other big plus that of working in this fashion is not a case of, hey guys, this is a revenue share and we want you to make this.
Mm-hmm.
It's, hey guys, here's a game design document that I made which basically says this is how the game works. We've got one character name and a brief idea of what they're going to, what the character general body shape is going to look like. Otherwise, come up with stuff. This is your game to be creative with as well. So Silverside was my idea. He's sort of like a captain character. The next character that got plugged in, that got invented, Bovey Jones, entirely Matthew.
Nice.
And basically we, the crabmen on the locker, entirely Chloe.
How many characters do you have now? Playable characters, and what they're called?
So we've got 4 playable characters at the moment. They're actually in and fully wired up. So Captain Long John Silverside, Bovey Jones, Daishi, who's Daishi is actually modelled on a very famous Chinese pirate called Qinshi. She was the most successful pirate of her time.
Yes, sorry, I'm going to plug my own channel a little bit. My YouTube channel, The Illuminati.
Mm-hmm.
We spoke about her on an episode we've not put out yet.
Yeah.
Because it's rumored that she found America before Christopher Columbus.
That one I don't know about, but I know that she actually retired as a pirate because the Navy was too afraid to take her down.
Yeah. She had to, but yeah, there's rumours she found America a couple hundred years before Columbus did.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, Daishi is the first one of our female characters to go in. So that was where we started. Originally, it was going to be all balls, but then we decided, first of all, we want to have it. We were going to introduce sort of like some diversity bits and pieces. So we decided when we read about Qinshi. Yeah, we want a cow. We want cows in there. So we've actually got another female character, which is the next one to be developed. I can't remember because the running joke behind her is she's got this ridiculously long name. It's she's kind of modelled on Queen Victoria, and she's something like Her Royal Highness the Rear Admiral Queen Aberdeen Angus the third or something like that. The idea is that the name is never going to fit on any of the screen. On the screen, yeah. But yeah, so we've got a second because the beauty of working with pirate bulls and cows, of course, is there's this whole stigma in the industry. You put in a male character and they're always hench and big muscles and that sort of thing. You put in a female character and they always look like pole dancers.
Yeah, it's the RPG trope, isn't it? Where you play it like we both played World of Warcraft back in the day. You have a male character, you have a male paladin, and he's fucking hench. He's like 4 foot of shielding. You play a female paladin, and she's got a steel bikini.
Yeah,
and it gives the same protection. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the beauty of having female cow model is all you got to do is put an udder on it. So yeah, and obviously, what's good about that is it means that we can avoid all the stereotypes of female characters. What was it that Matthew called it? So it's something about sort of like a female Kong character where all they did was sort of like made her pink and gave her great big eyelashes or something like that. But all those cliches that. And again, this is one that I know drives my other half and a few other people nuts. This whole sort of like cliches in video games, and quite honestly, I can understand it. We're moving into more enlightened times now, where you're seeing all this stuff on the TV about rights and all that kind of stuff, and I like to think that people are growing up a little bit.
There's no need to over sexualize.
Exactly.
It feels like we lost our way a little bit. It's like, going back when computer games exploded.
Was programmed by a woman, for God's sake. We
had Lara Croft, who was this amazing badass woman.
Mm-hmm. But even look at her design,
for no reason at all. You don't see Indiana Jones raiding temples in hot pants and a tank top.
But like I said, still top heavy and still the kind of clothes that it carries. Whereas we can completely obliterate that with Bullion because they're cows and bulls.
Well, there's the furry market out there, so you gotta be careful.
Yeah. So yeah, we got Silverside, Bovey Jones, Daishi. The fourth character is Cannonball, who's sort of like got a bit of a South African or Jamaican vibe to him. Sorry, and he is he's this big. He's about a head taller than all the other pirates. Big, sort of like the strong muscle guy who doesn't say much, but when he does speak, it's normally wisely said sort of stuff. If we were to put a voice to him, we haven't actually got his voice acting yet because it's a case of finding someone with the right accent. And obviously, coronavirus has kind of put the kibosh on a lot of that sort of stuff. But he basically uses a whole cannon as a bludgeon weapon.
See, my mother-in-law, well, she's going to kill me because I can't remember the name of the cow now. But my mother-in-law will kill me if I don't ask if you're going to put the big Scottish breed of bull in there. Her favourite was the big brown long fur bull with a horn.
I don't know about that. I know that Bobby Jones is modelled on a Scottish breed of cow.
I can't remember what her favourite Scottish breed is. It's the long-haired brown ones, but
yeah, I think that's the one that Bobby's modelled on because he's got this great big mop that covers over his eyes.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've already covered that base.
Mother-in-law will be happy. I'm safe.
Yeah. So we got Cannonball's the fourth with the and basically he swings this cannon around and then fires it point blank as so effectively it's not a ranged weapon, it's a melee weapon still. His little in joke is that whilst most of the other characters do their big sort of like head down and charge kind of move, he just puts the cannon on his back and uses it like a jetpack, Superman style. So those four are all playable, including their dash move now, which has been missing for ages. I mean, we did this whole blog post on we always sort of we'll do that when it's time to do it, and it was like right, it's time,
Well, this kind of leads on like you've been waiting. It's a big blog post you're going to put it in. You've been waiting when there's time, but has lockdown helped you find time? Have you been more productive with Bullion, or is it hindered it?
It's different across the board because I mean, obviously, I moved house right across the country we're really scattered out now. So I'm in Cheltenham. Paul, the other programmer's in Milton Keynes. We've got another guy in Slough, another guy sort of like in Essex. We got somebody up in Hull, I think it is. And some of it. Sorry.
I feel for him. No.
And so. It's. I mean, it is difficult. It is difficult in some ways because all of us have our different day jobs. So, for example, I'm still running at full capacity, as are a couple of other people in the team, because we can work from home at full, or we can work for we're essential services. A couple of the others have been furloughed, so and being stuck in the house, it has a mental toll, I mean, we try and keep the communication going, and there's actually a couple of the guys in the team that I make sure I do touch base on sort of like a non-Bullion term, or sort of like primarily just to sort of like just to make sure that help them keep their sanity and their motivation going. We miss the shows terribly because that, as you say, is like the rocket the rocket that sends you up and sets you up for the next big push on developments. But I think the insomnia has helped on the development.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like it's like I say, from my perspective, I've missed the expo so much. Meeting you guys, meeting new games I've never even known. Because like going back to what we were saying earlier, in 2017, I'd never heard of you guys and met you completely by accident at an expo. And I love how many games have I missed over the last few years by not meeting people at expos.
Yeah.
And then at the same time as well, it's that lockdown cabin fever.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, I mean, I actually had I had a point where the company I was working for, my first job, the company effectively collapsed. The boss made a very stupid decision, which even as a developer, I could see that from a legal perspective, he didn't have a leg to stand on. So the company effectively folded. I was out of work for a year, and then I was working for the next 2 years. I was working in this god awful work from home role. And I had this tiny little flat. And so when lockdown hit, I'm sort of like having flashbacks to those 3 years of utter hell. It's sort of like, oh my good God, can I even do it?
Here we go again.
I mean, had we not moved, it's a blessing in disguise that we made this move across the country because, we sold a house in the London area and moved over the other side of the country, so all of a sudden the money goes to a house that's about twice as big. So, at least we've got space to move around in and that sort of thing, enough room for the girls to run around a bit. And So
are you close to a release date yet then? Because you've been about 4 years in development now, I think, is it?
Yeah, I mean, from day one, we've kind of had a release date in mind, but like I said, we won't cyberpunk ourselves.
No, we're about to close to launch. Is Bullion close to launch?
Yeah, so we've had a launch date in mind for pretty much since the get-go. Actually, we'd set ourselves sort of like a time. So we have pushed it back once at the moment, simply because we had a couple of things that came up, and we had to because we have to adjust this around people's lives as well. It's not just a case that we're not like a game studio and think, okay, we're pushing it back because we're falling behind as a work unit, but we have to think in terms of there are people volunteering their time in this, and so we have to respect that. So yeah, we do have something in mind. I can't actually pull the trigger on that one, and until we've actually at least passed this COVID thing, and there's a few more things we need to sort out from sort of like an administrative angle, but we do have a definite idea.
Is it going to be a 2021 launch or a 2022 launch?
We're looking at 2022 at the moment.
Systems?
Well, the Switch is our primary contender. There's
perfect for Switch.
Yeah, so that's kind of like it's what's come out of the shows. We're looking at. Obviously, Xbox has just upgraded again, as has PlayStation. So those options will be looked at. But the beauty of these game engines and things that are out there now, they just switch from one to the next so readily that most of it's going to be just a case of polishing up for each platform. PC, I don't know. It depends a lot on what the market's like at the time. I don't know. From what we've seen, there's not really a big market for couch in PC.
Couch co-op on a PC is solitary or online gaming, isn't it?
But that said, when it's so easy to release on there, what's the harm?
Why not? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to push you on an exact date, right? But could I be cheeky and recommend one?
You could recommend one. I wouldn't be surprised if you actually got the same sort of thing in mind that I do.
I'd recommend, if you look for a 2022 launch, I recommend the 19th of September.
Yeah.
International Talk Like a Pirate Day.
Yeah, it's something that we have kept in our minds simply because, what kind of that is an obvious publicity push.
Yeah.
So it's but at the moment everything's kind of like up in the air. COVID's thrown us another curveball. The team management and who's actually in a fit state mentally to just keep pushing forward. It's platform wise, the Switch is the front runner at the moment, and then we'll see what else happens. One other thing that we might consider, though, depending on how things goes, the Atari VCS.
Ooh, that's a bit of a throwback to your beginners.
Well, Paul and I, we grew up, we learned our craft on the Atari ST. We learned how to do this on the Atari ST. And our heritage is those early games.
Yeah.
And the other thing, of course, is that it's like when Ouya was around. Do you remember Ouya, the Android game console? It may be sort of like a niche thing, but the heritage of a lot of these early games, you did have a lot of two-player competitive, because people they just didn't have the processing power or memory to do the AI. Mm-hmm. So you look at Pong, you look at Warlords, you look at tanks, all that sort of stuff. So we're kind of harnessing that, and the fact that there is this big wave of sort of like Renaissance retro stuff like Spectrum Next. So there's all kinds of possibilities that we're looking at. But it'd be really cool. I think especially at Play Expo, a retro gaming experience, and we rock up with Bullion running on a VCS. How in character would that be?
I don't see Bullion on the Atari VCS because it's just kind of like the perfect love letter. Like, this is where we came from, so this is where we are today.
Yeah. Each step of the journey has been sort of like trying new stuff, but it all goes back to those days, where sort of like getting multicolored text working, and then getting sort of like scrolling working, and then getting it so that we, sort of like platform games working and things like that. And and all that kind of thing. So yeah, it is kind of it is kind of closing a circle in many ways. But I would love to. I'd love to do something with it. Sorry.
There's something really poetic about that. I like it.
Yeah, it was. And of course, the whole sort of like thinking along the same line as Windows Phone back in those days, well, smaller market, niche market, but fewer things targeting it. Whereas, you look at, Steam obviously has become this huge monstrosity now with, Discover again, because of the sheer volume of stuff coming in, just like the Play Store, they can't moderate it. They'd need an army.
Yeah.
So you've got Triple I's alongside My First Game, and I'm actually wondering how many good games there have been out there that have just died at launch because they've been drowned out under a flood of stuff and they just haven't had the marketing budget.
Well, this is kind of going back to what I said earlier about not having expos for the last year or so. It's just how many good games have I missed and not been able to tell people about or shout about because I've not discovered them like I did you in 2017. We had no way of finding each other. I think I was on different PR lists to you. You had no way of accessing the PR lists. You couldn't email me to book an appointment in. I just found you by accident in Manchester in 2017.
Like I said, I was just being gobby.
Yeah, but it's not just like, oh, I'm not like making myself some savior or some like internet, but how many other people how many hundreds of people like me have not found hundreds of games like yourself?
I couldn't even think of it.
You know what I mean? It must be in the thousands where there could have been the next big game could be dead and buried now.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that sort of thing that make it. You get that once in a blue moon thing like Minecraft, Fortnite, those sort of things, which there could be loads of those sort of things out there, but because everybody sees those moonshot titles that just happen to be in the right place at the right time. And realize that it's so easy to make a game, with a bunch of assets, a load of code off a Stack Overflow, maybe a few tutorials from YouTube, hack it all together, and float it on the marketplace, or take the rolling ball tutorial and spice up the graphics a little bit.
Well, I think the perfect example from lockdown would be Among Us.
Yes.
Because one that released 3 or 4 years before.
Something like that, yeah.
And it just became absolutely massive over lockdown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like what took 4 years. It's like the planets aligning. Like needs the perfect situation, the perfect market for it to hit.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have any false illusions about we're not expecting any kind of miraculous marketing push or anything like that to get us to shoot us into the stratosphere and that sort of thing. We'd just be happy to make the game that we want to make and see that the careers of these guys who have been working with us take off in whatever direction that might be. And if we make some beer vouchers along the way, then so much the better,
I absolutely love that your main concern is making sure that like people like Matthew and stuff who've helped you out on this and taken a revenue share, that their careers catapult from this game. Not like you want Leda Entertainment to be big or you want to be massive or be a millionaire. Your first concern is I want the people who have believed in my project to launch careers.
Yeah, well, like I said, these are people who have thrown their hats into the ring with something that's something I came up with. That's the least I can do for them. And we've always pitched it as that way. When we've talked to people about who are interested in coming in, we've said we can't guarantee any money, so they know from the word go that they know from the word go what we're trying to achieve, and we're saying this is what we can provide, and what's the real beauty of it. And what I'm hoping is that the first show that we can do after lockdown, the first one we can get to, is going to be somewhere reasonably in the middle of everybody, and get the whole team together like we did for Play Expo London, and just get everybody at that place. And what we'll do is just turn it into this massive sort of like team party, this post-COVID party, where we can just get together, have a great time, have a few drinks and some good food, and play some Bullion with all these people, and just see how they react. Because I mean, out of the team, that we've still got 2 people on the team now who haven't done one of these shows from the behind the stand type of thing. That kind of buzz of watching that blast that we got when Bopscotch snowballed in 2014, watching their faces when Bullion does the same sort of thing, you know, people come up and play and sort of like, oh wow, this is like Spyro, this is like Crash, you know, and in terms of graphic style, and just watching them dig the humour, you know, and watching the guys who put this together and their labours actually being enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
That's, you know, I mean, what can compare to that? You know, it's not like we've. If you're in the gaming industry, if you're actually doing this for a living, then yeah, you know, obviously you want to be doing it because you enjoy it, but it is so easy to get dragged down. Just like with any other job, the job consumes things.
Yeah, yeah.
But by keeping it on the sidelines, you know, from all those years ago, it's just so magical to see. You know, even something that's taking as long as Bullion, because I mean, the arcade game, the arcade collection stuff, we were chunking those out at the rate of sort of like 1 a quarter. But so, you know,
I always feel like with indie devs, like one of the questions I was asking when they released a game, I was talking to the developer of Speed Limit the other night, and I was saying like this taken 3 years to make, and it's out there now. People are playing it. Is that wonderful feeling, or is it scary? You know. And it's that weird thing that you've got to think that you spent 4 years making this. This is your baby. And then now it's out of your hands. It's away. So
yeah, well, I mean, it's never these days. It's never truly out of your hands, because I mean, what was scary was back in the Atari days. You're releasing on floppy disk. There's no internet. There's no DLC. If your game has a bug in it, it's out there, and there's no fixing it. You know, whoever's got it, you don't even know who's bought it.
There's no day one patch.
Yeah, basically, if you've got something. I mean, Cursor Boulder was actually ready to go. I thought it was ready to go late '94, just before I started university. You know, it's sort of like, wow, I've just got this finished in time, great. And you know, people having computers on campus at that point in their rooms was quite a rarity. So the fact that I had this Atari ST, it wasn't a PC. People were sort of like, oh, what's that? That's a bit different, because it's not what you're seeing on campus. And then they ask, the next question of it is inevitably, have you got any games for it? Yes, I do. And so I actually had 2 Ataris at that point, and I loaned one to a guy I met in a different hall who I made friends with, and he was basically became my play tester, and he found so many little bugs that I missed, because obviously having built the game, I know exactly how to play it. Just like that chap you were saying where you jumped over his boss.
Yeah,
I missed all that. And so the end result was the launch of Cursor Boulder got bumped back by about 6 months as I ploughed my way through all these bugs and made sure they were good, because you know, like I said, there's no takebacks on floppy. Compared to that, you know, this isn't too bad.
This is why I think expos are important, because it gives indie developers like yourself a chance to put their game in front of 20,000 people a day or whatever, but also gives you a chance that you're making that game. You make it in the way you want it.
Yeah.
It gives you a chance to get player feedback, like you go in the wrong direction, or like say I play it a different way than you expect me to. So now you can change that. So I think that expos are instrumental to the industry.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this is why we've from the word go with first of all with Bopscotch and now with Bullion. The idea was, even if the code isn't perfect, even if it's a bit of a hack job in places, get production level graphics on there as quickly as you can, so that you can then start get something that you can put in front of people as early as you can. It's like the 2017 release of Bullion, which I still have a build for somewhere actually, because that we basically sort of like cloned out the existing build so I could rip the core out and rebuild from that. So I've got the old version still, and literally the character there wasn't a character select screen per se. It just had 4 silver sides on in the different colors, and it would sort of like play a little animation on each one as the controllers joined in. You know, controller 1 was always the first one, controller 2 was always the second.
Yeah.
You didn't have a concept of selecting. You didn't have an island select, because you only had the one island in there. It just dropped you straight into the game. You know, you didn't have a proper win screen. It just had some sort of like player whatever wins. You know, there was none of the. It was just the bare bones, and the actual gameplay. That one island was as production as we could get it. So it's saying this is what the gameplay will look like. Never mind the rest of it. Never mind the Chrome. This is what the gameplay will look like. What do you think?
And that feedback then goes, we've got a game here. We can commit the next 3 years to this or 4 years to this.
Yeah. Well, not just that. I mean, we were confident we had a game to begin with, but it's a case of okay. That first show we knew that we found so many bugs that we didn't even know about. I mean, there's one that we refer to the infamous teleporting dead cow bug.
Right.
And it was a combination of if you were in because Silverside had his dash rush move, he actually had the original on all fours version, which was where we found all the difficulties with the animation. But there was a way of getting it so that if you died as a result of doing a rush, it would kind of mess up your it would mess up your character's ghost's position relative to your live character's position, so that when you next died, your corpse would then teleport across the island. I didn't even bother trying to fix that. It was just a case of, right, that's gone. That's gone.
So, we've been talking a while here now, and I feel I've been keeping you a bit too long. So is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to mention tonight? Anything I've not brought up?
I think it's been pretty comprehensive. Thanks for listening to me ramble for so long, and I almost pity your poor subscribers in listening to me.
I love it. I think my viewers love it as well. It was like this isn't just bullying. You're not trying to plug your game, and I'm not being a shill for your game. It's like we know exactly what has gone into this game now. We know the guy behind the game. We know not just where the idea
one of the guys behind the game
came from. Sorry.
One of the guys behind the game. It's like
one of the guys. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's all we're all equals. I just have to be coordinating it.
Oh, we'll have to get Matthew on and Paul in a couple of weeks.
I'll see what I can do. I'll see what I can do at some point. We're next team meetings in just over a week. Maybe we can set something up.
Definitely, I'd love that, man. So I'll put all the links for Bullion and Leda Entertainment into the video for this. So it'll be in the description down below. What's the best place for people to find you? Would it be Discord or would it be Twitch? Twitter, sorry.
So to be perfectly honest, it's probably Facebook still, because our being hobbyists and part timers, we roll at such a slow rate. People aren't going to get daily updates. The blog posts are at very irregular intervals. Twitter and that kind of thing. They'll tend to be sort of like a burst around a show, and then it will kind of peter out. So this is all part of we're looking. When we're out of COVID, we're actually going to be looking at sort of like getting some assistance with the promotion side of it, and getting these regular updates out and that sort of thing, building up the audience for the big trigger pull. But at the moment, like I say, the best place is to just keep an eye on Facebook and on the Facebook page, and we just post ad hoc.
So I'll make sure the Facebook and the blog site are in the links below.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if anybody just wants to go to bulliongame.com, all the social media links are available from there. Instagram, Twitter, YouTube channel, all that sort of stuff. Like I say, it doesn't update very regularly. Nothing does, because we're the spare moments we have around our day jobs, we're making the game, not updating websites. But
well, we're both in the 40s, so the kids will probably call us boomers for not doing it. But thank you very much for tonight, Ben.
No problems.
Really appreciate it. I love learning the history. Like I said, I met you guys in 2017, and I know about this game. Learn the history of Leda and yourself has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much.
It has been great chatting, and obviously we'll hopefully cross paths at the next shows, and we'll be able to show you all those good things that we've been discussing.
Can't wait to see it. Until next time, thank you for watching, guys. Until next time, see you there.